estimates that in the last fiscal year, Canada spent more than $271 billion on COVID measures. More than $89 billion went to the emergency wage subsidy to help businesses and employee wages, and more than $67 billion went to the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, or CERB. And that has sent the federal deficit soaring to an estimated $363.4 billion in 2020 and 2021. That's more than 9 times what it was in the previous fiscal year when the deficit was at about $39.4 billion. We used to think that was high. This is spending on a level that has not happened since the end of the Second World War.
Billions and 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 billions.
We used to think that was high.
Say this pandemic is a time of opportunity.
Somebody's paying for it. Who is it? Now, of course, there are really only 4 places that money that passes through this house come from. 1, they can tax it. 2, they can borrow it. 3, they can print it. Or 4, God forbid, they can cut something else and reallocate the money. But none of those answers were forthcoming. Instead, a 5th novel explanation of the providence of this money came forward, finally, about 3 minutes into the long committee silence.
Expect more spending, big spending.
Expect more spending, big spending.
Billions!
How is the government paying the $7 billion bill associated with this proposal?
That question is directed to who, Mr. Polyev?
Anyone who wants to answer it. If they have anyone over there that is concerned about where the money comes from, that person could speak up.
Maybe you could choose one of the witnesses.
I don't know who on their side is responsible for this, but clearly they're getting the money from somewhere, so they must know where. Anyone here from Finance Canada?
I see Mr. Baylor.
Mr. Chair, I can provide a high-level response, but I'm afraid I won't be able to answer directly the honourable member's question. Because we're here to discuss it. And what I can say with regards to the cost of the measures in terms of Part 1, the 3 first programs that I mentioned, the hospitality, the tourism and hospitality recovery program, Part Businesses Recovery Program, and the local lockdown program have a cost of $3.2 billion.
There's a lot of people are willing to talk about how they're spending the money, but no one wants to talk about where it comes from.
Well, Mr. Chair, that is within the government's broader macroeconomic framework, and I'm not I can't speak to that.
Well, if $7 billion can appear magically from something called a government's broader macroeconomic framework, well, then everyone should have a macroeconomic framework.
There's a situation where there's an estimation of somewhere between $700 billion and $1.3 trillion.
How much is a trillion? Suppose I gave you a $1,000 bill and said you and a friend had to spend it all in a single evening out in the town. You'd have a pretty good time. Now, suppose you had a stack of $1,000 bills that was 4 inches in height. If you did, you know what? Congratulations, you'd be a millionaire. Now suppose you wanted to enter the super elite of the wealthy and have $1 billion. How tall of a stack of $1,000 bills would that be? The answer is a stack 358 feet high, seen here reaching 50 feet higher than the Statue of Liberty. Now, how about a stack of $1,000 bills to equal $1 trillion? How tall would that stack be? Think of an answer. Well, that stack would be 67.9 miles high. And I meant stack, not laid end to end or anything cheesy like that. A solid stack of $1,000 bills, 67.9 miles high. Now that's $1 trillion.
And so I announce on the floor of the House of Commons that Canadians owe $9 trillion.
Billions!
That's trillion with a T.